constitutes effective mediation. Innovative thinking, he said, on mediation is no longer an option, it is a necessity. This is the basis and purpose of this panel. For Turkey, this is also, this has been our guiding principle in our mediation efforts. Turkey is simultaneously hosting three support groups, Friends of Mediation groups at the United Nations, the OSCE, and the Organization for Islamic Conference. These groups have defined the field in mediation together with the UN Secretariat. 4 UN General Assembly resolutions have been adopted thanks to the efforts of these Friends of Mediation groups in 3 organizations. And similarly, the OIC Council of Ministers have been passing resolutions to transpose and further develop the terrain, the principles of mediation globally. These efforts also benefit from the series of conferences we hold in Istanbul on mediation. And innovation has been at the very core of these efforts. Some of the topics discussed in the Istanbul conferences have led the way, including in the connection between sustainable development and mediation, and the use of technology and mediation. Mediation deals with conflicts, and peace mediation deals with armed conflicts. Conflicts have always existed and will always exist. The fact of the matter is that even before the onset of the pandemic, some 2 billion people were suffering under conflicts internationally. And now we are seeing multiple transformations accelerated by the pandemic. And the best estimate is that the conflict scene will be influenced. As the pandemic goes away, we will have a scene where fragilities will increase due to strain on the economies. So to deal with the scars of the pandemic, innovation field has to be even more innovative and even more effective. There is ample room for creativity and innovation. I would argue that every mediation is different. Every mediation experience is different. And therefore, knowing these experiences is critical to innovating in the mediation field. In this panel, we will take a realistic view. We will not deal with theory, we will deal with the actual practice of mediation on the field. What are the dynamics on the ground? How they may be changing? What successful examples exist in terms of mediation activities? What new approaches, including the use of technologies, can we think of to enhance our mediation effectiveness? What are the role of international and global organizations? And entrepreneurial countries like Kuwait and Qatar, are new norms needed internationally? Can we build further capacity? There are many questions that are out there. And to take a stab at answering these questions, we have 2 very exceptional speakers, the honorable foreign ministers of 2 very exceptional players in the mediation world. It's a very distinct pleasure and honor to host in reverse alphabetical order His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Qatar, and Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser Al Mohammed Al Jabr Al Sabah, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Minister of State Cabinet Affairs of Kuwait. It is impossible to recount all the biography and remarkable careers and achievements of the 2 excellencies, so I'm going to go straight to the questions, and for the benefit of time, I will kindly ask the honorable ministers to make introductory remarks on some or all of the questions, or maybe there are other questions that I haven't posed, and if I may, in 6 minutes each, may we start with Sheikh Mohammed. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, for this kind introduction. And first of all, I would like to thank my dear brother and colleague, Foreign Minister of Republic of Turkey, Mawlud, for inviting us for this event. It is an exceptional, and congratulations for all the attendants that have been here believing in the language of diplomacy. And we believe this is a very good platform to engage between different countries, and engage from different backgrounds, finding a way that we can improve diplomacy. Ambassador, the questions that you have raised are actually a bit complicated, but let me try to look at it from different perspectives. I think the nature of the conflict is evolving and getting more and more complex and more different. And a domestic conflict that might happen in a country, it will have a regional impact, and if it will have a regional impact, it might evolve to a regional conflict, and then it will have a global impact. And this actually has forced the countries who are believing in diplomacy in doing more of preventive diplomacy and engaging before even the conflicts evolve and expand to a regional or to be a global conflict. So I believe if you will look also at the nature of the conflict itself, it will change down the road. Right now we are talking maybe about armed conflicts, we are talking about some disputes that might happen because of territorial issues between countries, but we are seeing more and more like conflicts in the arena of the cyberspace, for example, and there are no framework of mediation for such conflicts. Conflict might arise also in the area of the climate change, another example. So there is a need for developing the concept of mediation, but I think if we will go back to the basics of the mediation, it's all about the human contact and how you are reaching out between the parties of the conflict. And here, the most important element of that is to be trusted, number one. Number two is to act as a mediator and facilitator, that making the dialogue between the two conflicted parties easier, and not to act as an arbitrator. And here is the danger of the mediator when he starts to act in imposing solution. The role of the mediator should suggest solution, should suggest common ground between the conflicted parties. And by that, you can build more and more trust. I think also another part is very important, is to act very fast and to be very agile in your movement. And this is actually very important to prevent the conflict from happening at the beginning and working toward resolving it, or to contain the conflict and avoid further escalation. Both actually are very important. I believe now there are a lot of countries who are qualified in acting as a mediator, and they have the desire to act as a mediator. But it will always has its uniqueness, depends on the conflicts where it's located, depends on the country's relation with the different conflicted party, and depends also on the track record that the country has achieved in the mediation. Now we are also looking at how we can wrap the mediation along with some of the development and some of the assistance. And for example, if we will take an example that Qatar has made in the mediation in Darfur. The mediation of Darfur actually has led also to a development commitment that Qatar has pledged to Darfur in developing new villages for the internally displaced people, in developing healthcare facilities, in developing for them also an opportunity for a better life. And this is also an angle that's giving the mediator leverage that he can, when he is weighing in any conflict, he can make a real impact on the people directly. Last but not least, I think also it's very important that we continue empowering the multilateralism and continue strengthening all the multilateral frameworks or bodies that exist, whether it's regional or international, that can help in all the stages of the mediation and be supportive for the mediation efforts.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser.
Well, thank you so much. And the most challenging part is the 6-minute thing. So I'll try to concise my answer. First of all, I would like to thank our dear brother, Mawlud Jawish Oglu, the Foreign Minister of Turkey, for hosting us in present here in the Antalya Diplomatic Forum. Last year, we tried to have this meeting, and we had it virtually, and it was, albeit it was virtual, it was a success, but today it has showcased with the President's presence and all of the dignitaries how important this forum and diplomacy is, so thank you again, my brother. Regarding your question, I can only reiterate some or all of what my brother Sheikh Mohammed said, but not to be redundant, I would like to go to several topics as well. Regarding mediation, as far as Kuwait is concerned, is a shape-shifting notion. We have a history and we have an institutional memory of mediating either within the Arab League or the Islamic Ummah since back into 1963. And the most important aspect is, as Sheikh Mohammed said, you need complete neutrality, you need credibility, and you need savoir-faire. And you need them all collectively, not divided. It is the mean and way to initiate and to facilitate the mediation efforts. And if I just look recently back, over 3.5 years during the Gulf crisis, we had gained lots of experience in Kuwait and in the Gulf crisis. But the most important lesson that we have learned is that all of the factions and all of the involved quarreling parties were incommunicado. And that's what even made our efforts even harder to rise up the common denominators and the commonalities, and to sidetrack and put it on a parallel track, but differentiate the quarreling parties along together. So thank God, early this year, this crisis has been solved with our brotherly brethren in Qatar. But we think that there is still more to do in several hotspots in the world. As a matter of fact, what we see now is that when there is an absence of international law, an absence of not implementing UN Charter and the principles and basis of UN Charter, we see that there is a rise of conflict, and we see a longevity of conflict. Second, we see also that when there is such a crisis, it goes beyond the norm that's been existed before. Some of the matters are still emerging, and maybe even now with COVID and the repercussion of COVID, we will face other aspects of conflicts in the world. One of the things that we are anticipating, besides the normal classical conflict between regions or between territorial borders is repercussions on food security and water security. We think also one of the main aspects that now lies in the world, and what Sheikh Mohammed touched upon, is cyber security as well. So we have to even update and upgrade everything that we have learned, and we have to be to move even faster so we can keep on track with whatever emerging conflict there is. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Excellency. In a recent study, a branch of the Organization of Islamic Conference, CESRIC, has come up with a statistic about the percentage of conflicts that occur in the overall in the world, and they have come to the conclusion that 60% of all conflicts in the world take place in the OIC geography. And this is a very sad statistic. There are particularly two conflicts that I would like to highlight today. And one is Afghanistan, and the other one is Yemen. And I would request your take on where we are on those two conflicts and the prospects for the resolutions. Shall we start with you, Excellency?
I will handle Yemen.
Yes.
Right, okay. Well, thank you so much. Of course, Yemen is a very tragic in its own way. And the ongoing conflict in Yemen just showcases how the absence of an international focus and consensus can lead to such a tragedy. With Yemen, just to be brief on the matter, the conflict started back in 2015. In 2016, the quarreling parties expressed their wish for Kuwait to host them under the tutelage of United Nations. His Highness the Emir accepted, the late His Highness the Emir accepted this matter, and we have hosted them for 111 days. In 111 days, have created the foundation of all of the understandings and agreements that came after Kuwait in 2016, either Stockholm or Riyadh Accord or other understanding. And just to be frank in the matter, unfortunately, some elements were stubborn in their matter, and they have put forward the interest of themselves rather than the interest of their nation. And this is why this ongoing conflict is still going on. We have references, and we have references, the GCC initiative, the National Dialogue Outcome, and the UN Security Council resolutions, including Resolution 2216. But as I have said in my previous answer, once we are away from complying with international resolutions and with references, then all stakes are up in the air. Now, there are lots of effort, and we have to commend the effort now in Yemen. And we have to commend the effort, of course, of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia came with an initiative late in March this year, where it lays out a ground for a cessation of hostility under UN supervision. And we are waiting for the other party to act and be positively engaged with the Saudi initiative. I would like also to commend all of the Omanis, engagement. Now, it is very much commendable by the whole international community. We work in synergy, the three of us together, and also commending the UN Special Envoy and the US Special Envoy. The situation, the humanitarian situation is very dire in Yemen. And not only the humanitarian situation is deteriorating, but also the health situation is deteriorating, and also there is the spread of disease in Yemen and cholera, which necessitates the importance of a focus of the whole international community, the volatility of focus, and one time there is this attention, concentrated attention, and the other time there is less. It's not in the interest of the Yemeni people. I will conclude by saying that His Highness the Emir sees that this year there are three overtures. First, Al-Ula Summit, where there is the GCC crisis has been solved. Second is Libya, where there is this new international consensus on Libya, and there is this newly united formed government in Libya. The third might be Yemen. We think that it is still within our grasp. It needs a little bit more fine-tuning and focus, and so this year we can have another success in the region.
Hopefully, inshallah. Excellency.
Well, actually, your question regarding Afghanistan, I think that looking back at the conflict of the Afghan conflict, it's a very complex conflict. It's not a two parties conflict. It has multiple parties. And we have achieved an agreement between the US and Taliban at the beginning. And as we mentioned when we have achieved this agreement, that this is just a first step for the efforts to bring peace to Afghanistan, and this is our ultimate goal. Now, since the agreement was signed back in February 2020, until now, we are in the inter-Afghan dialogue, and there are some steps back and forth in that, but we didn't achieve a real progress yet. And we believe that it's the timing also is becoming very critical, because the announcement of the withdrawal of the US forces will be in September. That will be in September in 2021, which is in 3 months from now. And yet there is an Afghan consensus how the future of Afghanistan will look like. Our main goals now is to achieve a ceasefire between the government and Taliban mainly, and to achieve a consensus among the different Afghan parties on the future of Afghanistan, how it will look like, what kind of power sharing they will have, how the state will look like. Unfortunately, we didn't see that much progress, and there are a lot of factors actually in this. One of them, I'm not sure if the parties involved in the negotiations, they understand the sense of urgency that we have. We are trying to do our best along with other countries. And the second one, actually, the pandemic and what's, the consequences of the pandemic has slowed us down a lot. And just, as you mentioned at the beginning about innovative mediation and the way the other formats, and we mentioned that each mediation, each conflict is unique in itself. Afghanistan was a unique experience. It has multiple parties, it has different stages where each stages has different parties. And also in the facilitation or the mediation efforts, whatever they would like to call it, it's not only one country that's trying to mediate, but there are multiple countries who have the interest in the stability in Afghanistan, and actually it demonstrated how the cooperation between all those countries toward achieving the same objective is helping a lot in the progress. In Qatar, we will remain pushing the parties and trying to encourage them. We will remain providing them with the platform that is trusted by all the parties, that we will never interfere in imposing anything. But also, we would like to see something realized as soon as possible. And we are trying our best. Our friends and other countries who have the interest, including Turkey, is pushing for the same direction. We were aiming to get to Istanbul meeting here for the leaders, which was co-organized between Turkey, us, and the United Nations. And we didn't achieve it yet because of these complications. But we hope that we can see some solid step forward. And I think the best demonstration for the willingness and the good intention of all the parties is to stop the hostility against each other and to stop the war and have a ceasefire. And all of them should believe in the political process, how it will end up with and what are the outcomes. And it needs also to ensuring the participation of all the elements of the community, including women, including youth, which we have been like very consistent in bringing them aboard all the time to be part of shaping the future of Afghanistan.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. Well, as someone who has dealt with mediation for some time, I can already say that this has been an intellectual feast as much as a tremendous experience from the ground. I think we have reached the end of time, but I'm going to ask organizers to take some questions. I think I would be remiss not to take questions. So maybe 4 questions from the floor. Madam. Would you kindly state your name and affiliation?
My name is Hatice Nursena Yücel, and I'm a student from Asian Studies in Social Sciences University of Ankara, and I work as an assistant in Tokat Gazi Osman Pasha University. I'd like to thank all of their excellencies and our minister, His Excellency, for organizing this event. And it is a great honor to listen to all of your excellencies. And my question will be both of their excellencies about what are the possible risks of being a mediator, and are there any negative consequences of being a mediator? Thank you so much.
I mean, of course, trying to charter in a very treacherous water while maintaining neutrality, it's not an easy task. Trying to bring up the common denominators and the best interests of both parties while not being perceived as biased with either this side or this sides or this side or this sides as well is very difficult. But let me just concise it in one thing. If you start a mediation effort and both parties are discontent, are unhappy, then you're doing a good job.
Well, just to follow on the answer Sheikh Ahmed has just mentioned, I think that the common negative factor for the mediators is that he will be always accused by all the parties that he's biased, and actually this is natural with all the mediators or anyone who's trying to resolve any conflict. But what always encourages the mediator is the greater good that all of us we are aiming for. And the greater good is to avoid the conflict or to contain the conflict, which will ultimately lead to saving lives. And I think paying a price of being accused for a short time for the greater good and for the ultimate objective for saving even a single life of one person, I think that's very much worth it.
Question?
Thank you so much. This is Dr. Murat Aslan from Hasan Kalyoncu University. Actually, there is an increasing change in the context of mediation. We had state actors before, but currently we have non-state actors, and some of them are not regular ones, but irregular. So it makes legitimization of, for instance, terrorist organizations as a probable option. On the other hand, we should surpass state and non-state actors, but societies at all, because there's a trend of Islamophobia in the minds of some communities, some groups, and if there's no compromise of communities in the long run, that means it will create an additional conflict that cannot be equated between states and non-state ones. So what do you think about it? I mean, how can we prevent legitimization of irregular organizations, say terrorist organizations, and also intercommunal mediation? Thank you.
Well, actually, your question sounds like a statement, but let me just, try to. I hope that I got the understanding from what you are looking for. Actually, look, when you are talking to the conflicted parties, doesn't mean that you are endorsing any of them. And recognizing the non-state actors as part of the conflict doesn't mean that you are believing in their ideology, or you are supporting them, or you are endorsing them. And you will always need to speak to everyone to end any conflict or to contain any conflict. Here we need to distinction between two things. I think that as long as terrorist organizations are not believing in a peaceful resolution, they won't waste their time in talking to any mediators or any facilitator in order to engage for a resolution. So it is very, very delicate matter and needs to be dealt with carefully. So, for example, if you will go for an extreme organization who are conducting violent extremism and terrorism, and you will start treating them as a main party in any conflict, and that will ultimately legitimizing them, then our advice is to stop this mediation effort until they realize that all these activities that they have conducted and the act of violence that they are adopted is abandoned. Otherwise, we will end up with the legitimization of the terrorist groups. And I think that it's very important to put a clear definition for what can be called a terrorist organization.
One more? Excellencies, can we take one more? Yes. One final question, please.
I'm excited, sorry about that. My question is so simple. What's your advice for the young people? As you know, we are all affected for the coronavirus and the situation is so bad. And yes, that's my question.
I couldn't hear. Well, the council, I mean, for young ones is numerous, but I hope that it's regarding diplomacy and mediation. Anyways, regarding diplomacy and mediation, we think that, as my brother Sheikh Mohammed said, whatever conflicting parties, if all of the parties are not convinced to go along with mediation efforts, then everything else is futile. Everyone must be totally convinced that this is the role forward and that they believe on the mediators and or mediator and his or her or their efforts. This is number one. Number two, while you want to enter into mediation, you have to have two things: either leverage or incentives, and you have to be more creative in this matter. This will guarantee the possibilities and potential of success. Third, do your job tremendously well with all the homework needed. Try to go back into history, see what brings the parties together, how to bridge gaps, and try to find common denominators and to isolate temporary the conflicting aspect. Whenever there is a mutual interest on the forefront, then other aspect of conflict gets less important than it was in the beginning of a conflict. This is really, in a nutshell, my advice for the young generations.
He's the older and the wiser, so I think you have to take his advice. I cannot add more.
Yes, I'm also very grateful for the question from the youth. I think building capacity is critical among the youth and their inclusion in the processes. I think this was an excellent panel. I thank both excellencies for their wisdom, for their insights, and for sharing them with us. I thank the ministers in the audience and all the ones who came up with these brilliant questions and everyone attending. Thank you so much. Please give the excellencies a round of applause. Thank you very much.